Bulavinaka, good evening and namaste. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Tonight, as promised, we have two guests, and that's a representative from Catholic Education and former president of the Fiji Principals Association, Ben Salacakau, and parent, lawyer, and representative of the Chinese Education Society, Glenis Yee. Glenis and Ben, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to come on the show. Now, out of the 916 schools that we have in Fiji, only 13 are government schools. They are Delainamasi Government School, Natambua Primary, ACS, Bodelevu Secondary, Lambasa College, Levuka Public School, Nasinu Secondary, Natambua High, QVS, RKS, Sila Central, Suva Grammar School, and Vunisea Secondary. The rest are run by school committees, basically the communities that we are growing up in. Please confirm, first of all, Glenis, that you and Mr. Salacakau, both of you, and your committee-run schools based on other groups have made a submission on what the schools need at the moment.
That is right. We have made a budget submission on behalf of various school community organizations. We have amongst our group the Methodist Church, the Catholic Church, which Ben represents, Indian Education Society, Gujarat Education Society, Arya Samaj, the TISI Sangam, Rishikul Mahasabha, and the Great Council of Chiefs, Board of Governors, who manage Ratu Sukuna Memorial School.
Now let's talk about the state of our school infrastructure. Ben, if you can start off with, you've been a former principal, a former president of the Principals Association, and also now part of Catholic Education.
Thank you, Vijay. I go back a long way, long time. I've been around the schools. I've been principal of two government schools, Levuka Public and Lambasa College as well, and been principal of two Catholic schools. I recognize there's quite a bit of difference between government schools and community schools because of the funding. And the schools in Fiji have, for me, being at Maris, for example, Maris had begun education in Fiji like all other churches before government even thought about opening schools. The churches were already opening schools, not for their own denominations, but for everyone. And at Levuka, I saw this. Delana Methodist had already one of the first schools in Fiji that had opened and was running schools, the Methodist Church, as well as in Levuka Public as well. So the churches were already running schools from the outset, even before Fiji was ceded to Britain. So the beginnings of community schools were always a challenge, but with the determination to open their schools in wherever they were. At Maris, when I was at Maris, brothers celebrated 200 years of the establishment of the Maris brothers. And they have been in Fiji for over 100 years, having started schools as well. First beginnings of Maris Brothers was in Suva Street. The brothers opened their school there because there was no education provided for other races. And the story has it, when the brothers saw the need, they established the school, and every day they would ring the bell, and then later on, as the students come, a little while later, the constabulary will come and close the school. That was it, until finally the pressure was too much. Government gave in and allowed the schools to begin. And so progressively, much of the education in Fiji was through the effort and the sweat of the community.
My uncle and my dad went to Lomaivuna primary school, and when they started, they didn't have proper floors, and it was the community that came together to build the school. And I'm sure we're all products of our public school system. Like I went to Jespa Primary, Natambua High School, so we know how good our school system can be.
But what is it? What is the state of infrastructure of our schools now?
Very sorely lacking. I think the Australian Infrastructure Assessment Report confirms this. There's in the schools that they assessed, 86 in the Suvarnasori corridor, like 70% were overcrowded. There's a need for 249 classrooms. Over half had structural defects, corrosion, asbestos, sanitation facilities. More were required, and that's in our major developed area. Can you imagine what our rural schools are going through? Our schools in the west that face termite infestation. I think I read the other day on Fijivillage about St. Thomas, and they were learning in tents. Seriously, how can our kids concentrate in these conditions?
This is quite horrifying, knowing that if you're just looking at the Suvarnasori corridor based on the Australian report, the warning bells are there, the red flag is up. So what are the struggles that your schools have had to go through, knowing they're trying to find your way? Catholic education runs a number of schools as well, but your dollar can only go so far.
That's right. Yeah, Catholic education runs 63 schools. That's 44 primary schools and 19 secondary schools. I am manager for one of the schools in Suva, primary school. Manager, chairman of the board at St. John Bosco, which is in Nepani. It is in one of the more depressed areas. This problem is staring at us in the face. It's right there. We are right in the cold face of these issues. There is not enough toilets for the number of students. That school was probably designed to accept maybe 400 or 500 students. Right now it's nearly 800. And the toilets are nowhere near what it should be. We also run kindergarten, which is in dire need of the facilities for the number of students who are attending schools there, the kindergarten there. And then right now, we are looking at another housing development right next door. And we are bordering that housing development. And building materials have already been dumped there. We know the pressure on us will be even more. And yet, the money, as we realize, we just have to reach beyond what government provides for education. As I said last week, we have tried to engage the church to help with the improvement at the school. So in our meeting, in the church meeting last month, it was agreed that all the communities, 22 communities, would adopt a classroom each.
The congregations.
Congregation. And of course their reaction was immediate. Why should we do it? Because most of the schools there do not belong to the parish, either because they are non-Catholics or they live outside of our parish boundary. And some communities do not have a student there. They don't have one child attending St. John Bosco, and one of those communities is ours. But we took it on because that is a parish school. We own it. So they have accepted that and have decided, and we have started raising funds for funding our classroom, our allocated classroom. Last week, the community was selling rice and curry, beef curry and rice, to try and get the money to fund the classroom. But we will do it. We want to do it. What else can we do?
So you to get this clearly sorted out, you are saying the Catholic congregation have taken it upon themselves to look after the schools, although the congregation members may not be parents of the school.
Yes, that's right.
Because of the lack of support.
Yes. That's right, Vijay.
Now, in relation to the upkeep of the school infrastructure, Glenis, you highlighted about the Australian report. There is a real need to make improvements now. We have issues with asbestos, as you said. We have issues with termites. Then we've got overcrowding. What do we need to do?
First, we need to acknowledge the scale of the problem. Seriously, there seems to be, silence about this and a lack of focus. So we are glad that the Education Act review process is ongoing at the moment. So it has raised a lot of awareness on it. So we're advocating for, as part of the budget submission, that there be an increase in the free education grant that's given to schools, that there be a change in policy, because right now schools are only allowed to use 20% for buildings. We had, in our survey that we conducted of 107 schools around Fiji, a school mentioned that they needed a new concrete floor that would cost $150,000. Then another school mentioned, that rural school, that they only get $15,000 a term, and if they can only use 20% for building maintenance, that only gives you $3,000 a term, $1,000 like each month during the school term, which is nowhere near what is needed. So if that school that receives the 15,000 were that school that needed the 150,000 floor, it would take about 16 years to fix that floor, regardless of the other, needs that they
without
have.
having to raise funds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have been told, you've been put in a box that the free education grant should be sufficient, and I think it came out from around 2015. Mm-hmm. So from 2015, you have been told this free education grant that you have been given should be sufficient. What is your view on that?
My view is clear. It's very, very insufficient. And it's made worse by the fact that ever since, we started off with inadequate funding. Mm. And progressively, a lot of the repairs have been put back, until now. The scale of repairs needed is massive, because no repairs are being done or adequately to keep up with the normal wear and tear. So buildings have got leaking roofs, needing coat of paint, louvers that have fallen off, as the window frames have rotted over the years. The scale of repairs is massive. That's what we realize at our school. And for us, because Catholic education has 63 schools, collectively there is a lot. We have our latest issue is St. Thomas. Now they have relocated students from 2 of the double-story buildings into the hall. They're going to need space outside there because termites are living in those buildings. So it's massive.
And it's being a former principal, studying in a tent brings a whole new challenge in itself.
Yeah.
For a country like Fiji, if we are studying in tents.
Yeah.
And the FEG hasn't, kept up. In fact, it's reduced based on one of the surveys that we did. We saw a 13% reduction in nominal value, regardless of inflation. And it hasn't kept up with inflation for over a decade. So that, by our calculation, that's about 30%, and that would be very conservative. So the schools are getting less, and they're having, for our urban schools, more students to deal with, because if the infrastructure hasn't kept up in the rural areas, people will move to the urban areas, and we can see that already with the instances of overcrowding.
And how far does the dollar go? How much per child does the government give for primary and secondary, and how are you trying to work with that number?
For primary school, it's less than $1 a day.
Less than $1 a day for a student?
For each student that the school receives, by our calculation. So you put that into context, right? That's just more than a pencil and less than a can of tuna. It's really insufficient. And, it's also inconsistent with the messaging that children are our future, you are precious, but this is how much you're worth to us.
Right.
So is the government may come back, and it's been said before that they provide for the salaries of the teachers, they provide the free education grant, that should be enough. What do you have to say to that?
It's not kept abreast with inflation. We've had VAT increase during that time, which the schools can't recoup. You know, we have to account for that. There's been wage increases. And because of these, you know, needs, where we try to prioritize infrastructure maintenance, you just can't keep up with the other costs and the other extracurricular activities or that you might want to have in your school. So art, music, you know.
Question about digital education. In the modern era, we know overseas they are moving on to all sorts of things and how we can digitize everything that we're doing, and including the use of technology in education. There's what level of technology should be used so that the country that produces students are keeping abreast of what's in store for them. Ben, where do we sit in terms of that? You run 63 schools, Catholic education, a lot of talk about computer classes being allocated, but there's no computers in the computer room. What is the situation as far as digital education is concerned?
Many of our schools have attempted to go that way. You know, they started off initially, but I don't know how many are actually keeping up because of, you know, the evolution and developments in digital education. Computers get outdated, new things come. I don't know how well they are keeping up, you know, but the majority have not gone that way. They just don't have the resources. When I say, if, you know, some of our schools, perhaps schools like Xavier College and a few other schools that can manage. But otherwise, most of our schools, nothing has happened in terms of digital education because of the other priorities. We have so many other priorities just to keep the school going. And we can't go that way because it's kind of luxurious and very high maintenance too.
Glenis?
Yeah, I think Ben is right. You know, you have to worry about upkeep in terms of subscription, software, internet monthly costs. And I'm not sure whether we have a structured program to roll out digital education. I think the ministry is looking at that, but whether it has received, you know, wide-scale adoption, I'm not sure. Yeah.
And definitely you don't have money for it.
Well, it would be a challenge when you're worried about the infrastructure.
So at this point in time, if people are talking about in the Education Act consultation, you know, a lot of students are saying, let's modernize, let's try to use AI and other things. From the school administrator's point of view, you're saying the infrastructure is not ready.
It's not.
Definitely.
Not. And that should be our first focus. Seriously, our kids need to be learning in a safe, secure environment.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Oh my gosh! Oh, what's in the box?
You're probably wondering, what's in the box? Well, if you must know, it's actually me. Before you call the police, I'm actually an app. The all-new Fiji Village app. Here's an update. See what I did there? I gave you an update. What's new? Well, for starters, I look different. My new layout also comes with stories if you're looking for something short and sweet. I will bring you the latest news on the dot so you stay updated. You're welcome. You don't have to go anywhere for content because I bring the content to you. Not only can you listen to your favorite radio stations, you can also watch online video content. Which reminds me, do you love sports? Well, guess what? With the Fiji Village app, you can stay up to date with your favorite sports and scoreboards, no matter where you are. Your #1 news website just got better with an app. Download and get updated now.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Street Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight, Ben Salacakau. He's part of the Catholic Education, former principal, former president of the Fiji Principals Association, and lawyer, parent, and representative of Chinese Education Society, Glenis Yee. Now, let's look at, we have a major issue at hand here. It's all about priorities, and we know every government, we need to prioritize what means the most. Education is one of those priorities that matches with health, of course, like social welfare and other matters, infrastructure, that become paramount for any government. We know that the neglect is real with what the schools are facing with the Australian report. I'll ask you first, Ben. We have other factors that we can talk about, which includes admin staff, ancillary staff, PMAC. We're saying about we need to focus on other non-academic based ways, looking at creative arts, art and craft, music classes. What are the challenges here for the schools?
For us, education in Fiji is very exam oriented. So a lot of these things are in the second or third tier in the schools for a number of reasons. One is the facilities are not there in terms of teachers, and also because of exam orientation, a lot of these subjects even in the school are taken out so that more time can be given to academic subjects. But you know, for holistic education, we have to prepare students for the world at large, the kind of world that they will face. And if the school has not prepared them, they get lost. Either they are so narrow in their education, very focused, they're not people of the world. They don't respond to social issues. They don't respond to environmental issues. You watch the people who are being involved in these issues out in the community. It's the same people who are involved in environmental issues. They are involved with the Lupus Foundation and Heart Aid, etc. Because at school they were very, very narrow in their involvement because the schools didn't have it. They were focused on academics.
I'm on FCEF's committee,
Fiji
the
Commerce and
Employers Federation. I'm chairing one of their committees that is looking into the Education Act. And from an employer perspective, we see that the product of our education system is not fit for employment. And a lot of employers are having to invest significantly in remedial training to get our kids up to speed, as well as they're having to bring in migrant workers to deal with the situation. So there's a disconnect between our education system and what employers need.
So the students are not work ready when they're coming out?
The complaint that we get from our employers is that they're not, and there's significant training is needed. So there needs to be that connection in terms of curriculum development and a real look at, what are kids learning. I looked at my son's social science book the other day, and he was learning about citizenship rights from the 1970 Constitution. Seriously, how would that be relevant to him today?
It's not even in existence.
Yeah.
The issue here is it seems like we've put ourselves in another situation where I can say as a parent too, I've seen recently where the first term and second term you're just speeding through the whole syllabus.
Exactly.
And then third term everything is about just studying those first two terms, and at times the students can't keep up because the teacher just wants to finish the whole syllabus in 2 terms. Is that being realistic that we're preparing our people for the future?
It's to me, it's not teaching. You want to teach students, you must, go travel with them until they understand. And not speed through the curriculum, and then try and, recover information that is wrong. That's why a lot of them are not holistic in their learning. They are very exam oriented. They're cramming. They're using past exam papers. Exam preparation intensely. That's what's happening. So, when I went to school, when I was at Marist, we had a metal workshop, wood workshop, technical drawing room, all speak and spend. There was the practice. People go there, they do it on Friday afternoon, it's maintenance, they learn how to make sure the tools are maintained. And they had these skills. And they came back, whether they reached tertiary education or not, they had these skills which helped them. But I was horrified when I came back to Marist in 2016.
You went back as principal?
When I came back as principal in 2016, these rooms were very, very run down. None of the machines worked in the woodwork room. And I tried. One of the old boys came trying to help.
Yeah.
But there was really no support for them. I don't know what is happening now with regards to those, but students were learning woodwork, metalwork, technical drawing.
Glenis, the other issue that we are facing is the lack of libraries, challenges of reading. Are we just churning out students from the system without proper systems of learning? There's a lot of concerns being raised about that as well, and you said from the employers as well.
So I think a lot of things contribute to it. I mean, not least of it is we live in a digital world right now, so kids are hooked on their devices.
Right.
But there needs to be a real focus on improving, going back to the basics in kindergarten, the phonics, ensuring that by class 3, all our kids are able to read. Right now we have this policy where, they're allowing repeat or no repeat policy. So kids are just funneled through the system, unprepared. And my cousin, who's a principal, says that they have non-readers entering high school. Like that should be concern for us, because if people can't read, how can they comprehend? How can they comprehend, that drugs are a road to nowhere, or HIV could potentially kill you? How can they read the road signs? It goes back to that fundamental basics. You need to be able to read and comprehend and understand.
They now have a literacy and numeracy program in the schools, but I don't know how strong, really, that is being, supervised by a ministry, except sitting the LANA exams, literacy and numeracy exams. I don't know, but we have a Ministry of Education has a library services. They have a library in Nasese. I used to go there quite often, take my grandchildren after school. Every Thursday, that was a program that I would take. They would go there and borrow books. There's hardly anyone there. So I don't know how strongly they are pushing, reading, developing reading habits. It's not just learning to read, but, having a reading habit. They have to, because no matter how the material comes, digitally or through whatever means, you must have the desire to read it. Otherwise, you're going to learn from somebody else who has read it and analyzed it. Because reading is the way to independent learning. Otherwise, you'll always be a dependent learner, and you're going to copy stuff, copy ideas that other people have, copy assignments when you go to university. You're very dependent learner. Otherwise, if you can develop independent learners, then they will go ahead and later on grow into interdependent learners. Then they can discuss and offer ideas, confidently sit in a group and contribute. That's interdependent learning.
Then we're building future leaders. Let's talk about your budget submission. Of course, you've had a long list of people who basically are communities within the country that are running majority of the schools. As I've said, 916 schools in Fiji, only 13 run by government. The rest are representatives of the community who Glenis, Ben and others represent in our community. In relation to the budget submission, have you asked for an increase in the free education grant from government?
Yes, we have. We've asked for at least a restoration to the 2014 purchasing power. We've asked for annual CPI adjustments, which should be a no-brainer because everyone knows that costs increase. We've asked for relaxed flexibility in terms of fundraising rules, because right now we are only limited to one fundraiser a year from the school premises, and for that we need ministry approval. Sometimes those approvals can take time, and suddenly you're having 5 schools having their fun days on the same weekend. We've also asked for a bit more equity, just to consider the needs of the different communities, because we have rural maritime schools that may not have the population that they could reach into to ask for funds. And we've also asked for provision for targeted fees so that those who can reach into their community and seek the funding necessary to build up their schools.
So let's talk about the level of grant. As you said, for primary schools it's $1 per child.
Less than.
Less than $1 per child, and it can only go so far. In terms of the increase that you're asking for, will that be sufficient to do the work as you require in terms of upkeep of the infrastructure? I know that you've said to take the consumer price index into account, inflation into account, or will we still be playing a catch-up game for some time?
I don't think you can apply a one-size-fits-all approach, right? We need the minimum 50% increase, but each school has different needs.
50% increase?
Yeah.
Okay.
Minimum. But each school has different needs. Some may have newer buildings that don't need as much maintenance. So there just needs to be more flexibility in the approach and a consideration, for equity in terms of the different needs that schools face. Coming out of the education review, we noticed that a lot of the schools in the rural maritime areas faced higher operational costs and mainly transportation because of the remoteness. So, right now you have this FEG allowance and you're given certain allocations that you need to use the funds in, say 20% for building, certain percentage for library. There needs to be cross-utilization based on needs.
Based on need for the school.
Yeah.
And the FEG issue is
FEG being free education grant.
Yeah.
That's what we have asked for, an increase and also relaxation in
A minimum increase of 50%.
50%. Some may argue that some schools have managed with their current funding level, but if you look very closely, those schools have been smart. They have developed or built some means to raise additional funds. They may have grounds which are on hire, they have halls which are on hire and making money that way. But not every school has that facility. Either they are not in the right locality, or they don't have the right number of people, they just don't have the facility. Some schools even struggle to find playing space.
Government may not have the money to give you what you need. Then how will this play out?
Which is why we're asking for provision to allow, targeted fees, so that if a school needs building maintenance, they're able to charge a building fee. And when we went to school, we all paid that.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is how our communities built these schools, through levying targeted fees. We say that this free education grant is really not free, because ultimately we're paying the cost. We see it in the deteriorating buildings, and we see it in the outcome, the education outcome for our kids. 6,000 kids failed year 8. Exams, the 41% for math Like that is unacceptable, even if you think about, that we're too exam oriented. This is just primary school. What about our high school students?
Despite being exam oriented, still getting low pass rates, which means some things are just not working.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, some students opt out of school because they're not gonna pass. That's why we have a lot of students who have dropped out. A lot of young people out on the street because they realize. The other day I was watching one of the clips about one of the presentations at the education review. One of the teachers there, sister who used to teach, she said one of the reasons one of the things that shocked her was the number of people who could not read coming into class 8.
Yeah.
And these people normally would drop out because they know it doesn't make any difference whether they sit the exam or not.
And she did mention about the added stress that then they have to try to help them to read.
Yes.
The issue in relation to some parents just saying, no, we don't want to pay fees. Government has said that parents should not pay any fees. We've had that scenario. You are asking for targeted fees. How can that mindset change, because it's sort of built over the years that this has been taken care of by government?
Yeah, that one of the results of that, that policy, no fees, many parents have become disabled by they don't know what to do. If government is not going to give back to school $200, their students are not going, their children are not going to school. They just lost the imagination and the drive to, no, this is my responsibility. It's the parents' responsibility before it becomes government's responsibility. Parents must take it up. Otherwise, their children shouldn't read the message that, my parents are not going to support. They go to school, you will see the effect on the children. But if the parents are right there, they accept whatever the school decides as is good for the children, they will respond. The children will only respond to how the parents are responding to the needs to provide education, their responsibility.
So one of the targeted fees, Glenis, you're looking at maybe building fees or maintenance
IT
fees?
for schools that want to roll out, digital learning, extracurricular, if they want to, say, have music classes, for those that want to opt in. But going back to this free education, it contributes to this handout mentality that they are always complaining about. Government is always complaining about, that there's too much handout mentality. And people are too self-reliant on the state. But this is a prime example of, these are the conditions that they set. They've removed the responsibility and put it on themselves, and it's clearly insufficient. I think there's a quote that one of the greatest things that you can give an individual is, the ability to solve their own problems, and with a belief that they can do so. And in this case, we haven't allowed for those conditions. So we really need to think about going back to what was in place prior to the FAIG, where the communities chipped in, the communities took a leading role into shaping, the education opportunities that were available for their children.
In terms of fundraising activities, you are also asking for flexibility. Some may say it was abused in the past. A number of fundraising activities took place, and where was the money going? What is your message to those people who may be skeptical about more fundraising activities in schools?
Of course, there might have been some issues where abuse had taken place, but those things are manageable. The bigger need is what should drive our decision and our determination. The bigger need is to get our schools into shape. Otherwise, currently many of our schools are broken, the windows are broken, and floors are
Crumbling.
cracking, and a lot of things are going wrong. I worry about the fact that many of these students sit in classrooms that are broken, and consequently their personalities can become broken too. You know, they don't worry too much about how the school is, because an added broken window somewhere really doesn't make any change to how the situation is. They're broken. So I dream about the fact about having schools that are spick and span, you know, such that, you know, so sterile, students are frightened to touch the wall. Then only they will respond, they will change. But if the school is already broken, no, they come at 8:30, doesn't really matter. 9 o'clock, they're disappearing, going to the toilet very often. What happens there, don't know. And then, you know, they go out of the school. They don't have the pride. They're not, you know. That's what I worry about. For my school in St. John Bosco, you know, we keep telling them, and there's a lot of parents who come from the, you know, the more challenged areas in our community, you know. But we try to encourage them, take ownership of the education of their child, because what they become should be what you dream about.
And your school, St. John Bosco, you're saying it's supposed to cater for 400, but now it's almost 800.
Yeah, it's almost 800.
With no extra facilities.
No extra, you know, few have been, but all the classrooms are busting at the seams. And there's very little playing area. Government had promised to build a hall there, just an assembly hall. Number of years now, it's left only with its foundation, not complete. So these children are venting their frustrations elsewhere. You know, in the walls, in the toilet, and, you know, they're venting their frustrations. We don't blame them, because that's the environment we put them in. So that's why we are working very hard to try and improve it.
What did Ben Ryan say? The standard you walk past is the standard you become.
Yeah, standard you walk past is the standard you become.
And it seems like that's the reality in our schools at the moment.
That's why we have to raise the standards of our facilities.
Fundraising activities, targeted fundraising with clear focus. Glenis, do you think that's the answer to get over those suspicions that this may be for other means?
Yes, it's needed, but on top of that, you know, you also have to think about how the communities run their schools. If you want them to be accountable, you have to give them the training and the mechanism and the means to be able to. If they can't afford the admin staff to pay, you know, to account for these funds, of course you'll end up in that situation. So it comes back to the situation that you've created. So, you know, the ministry focus should be on helping administrators meet their requirements. And it should be, we think, also on focusing on their core functions, teacher resourcing, curriculum development, because another constant complaint that we have, and we also have seen this, is the teacher shortages. There are just not enough teachers going out to the schools.
Now, you know, this is getting quite overwhelming, and those watching here around Fiji and abroad would really get a true picture from the school administrators, what they're facing in the real situation, or the lack of it, the neglect that is in our education system. No doubt engagement needs to take place. If you can confirm whether school administrators have enough engagement with the government, with the current government, Ministry of Education and Ministry of Finance. I've come from a time when I've been parent where we as parents used to go and clean up the school, take part in fun days, and ensure that we had a beautiful classroom, go and paint the classroom, even bought desks at Suva Grammar School in Veuto, and even paid for scripture education for teachers at Gospel. Are those systems necessary to ensure that the parents are engaging and government facilitating to make sure it happens, because the government cannot pay for everything?
Yeah, I guess that we are being forced to do that in recognition of, you know, the limitations in funding. So now, and also with the teacher shortages as well, a lot of schools are running remedial classes, which are taught by retired teachers, perhaps, or parents in the school who can do them. Some of them these are paid for by parents, etc. Because when the teacher-pupil ratio is so high, of course, individual attention is very small. So that's why these parents are paying to get classes outside of school, which is kind of recent. It was normally everything was handled by the school, but that's a current situation for us. I know that we will just have the parents will have to pitch in, either financially or physically, but they have to be there spiritually as well.
There's no two ways about it.
We need the parents. We need the parents. This situation needs the engagement of the parents. And now, for example, for us, like the Catholic community recognizes that even with the parents' involvement is insufficient. So the church is coming in to make sure that their school, which is built in their parish, can raise its standards.
Glenis?
Yeah. So I think going back, a lot of these community schools, even though they were built for their specific communities, the demographic is such now that they allow for, kids of other religions, other races. So they serve a wider community purpose. I'm sure, the Arya Samaj, the TSIS Sadnatan, we're all in the same position. At the end of the day, this is a shared responsibility, as we have already stated in one of the op-eds that we put out. At the end of the day, this should be a partnership between the communities, government, and the parents, because these are all our children.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break. About 20 years ago, we had a major drug bust, and you would remember, you would have been part of the operations at Laudala Beach. A lot of people in Fiji did not know what was methamphetamine. And what we are picking up on, people are saying it's readily available. Just the issue in relation to General Secretary, was that a tactical move that he ejected himself from Parliament?
Personally, it's unfortunate.
How are you dealing with those police officers who may be allegedly involved in this?
Vijay, no one is above the law.
We assure you that we will be having police officers around.
As a result of that bad policy, by the end of this month, we would have lost close to about $70 million in government revenue.
Bula Vinaka, I'm Vijay Narayan. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan. Watch it live on the Fiji Village Facebook page and YouTube channel.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. A very important issue being discussed tonight. I'm sure it's touching the hearts of many when we're talking about our students struggling in the environment they're in as far as studying is concerned. As government, as parents, as teachers, as school administrators, all as a community, what can we do to better the education standards in Fiji? No doubt, it's bursting at the seams. We have big issues in terms of infrastructure, and those issues continue to remain with this budget submission made by the school committees. And as I've said, that we have Ben Salacakau and Glenis Yee talking about that. Education Act 1966. Glenis, you're a lawyer also by profession. We have a legislation that is totally outdated, that has been in place before we gained independence. Definitely we need an urgent review and some good things based on current standards.
That's right, but this free education policy, other education policies have come in place, despite that legislation. That legislation has provision for fees, but obviously they're not being implemented. As a society, I don't understand this fixation with, legislation, because really what should be driving change is the needs on the ground. And that can be implemented through policy changes right now. It does not need to wait for the Education Act to be reviewed. We can start looking at policies that work for our children, that give us the outcomes that we require, that address the urgent needs on the ground. That can be put in place while the review continues.
Do you think we're running out of time?
I think so. I think we are running out of time because already the current system has got a lot of victims. They're out there, out on the streets. You look at the people out on the street, they're getting younger and younger and more and more. And, just that they're so widely distributed throughout our urban areas, we don't notice them. But if someone was to go and, actually do a head count, you'd be appalled at the number of people there. For me, my wife keeps complaining because as we drive around, I keep saying, that kid should be in school. That kid should be in school. Why is he out of school? Temptation to ask why. And she always tells me, don't say anything because you can't do anything. But I notice it. I hope government is noticing too. But the numbers are there. I don't know whether social welfare has any idea of the list of people who are on the street. But you go to Extra and Northern Beach and the Center Point and other shopping malls, etc., you'll find them selling pies or purini or roti and curry or just sitting around begging. These are people who should be in school. And those are the victims of our current system. So the system must change already. It's overdue.
Glenis, we know that the submission has been put in. The budget address will be delivered by Minister for Finance, Professor Biman Prasad, on the 27th of June. Based on your submission that you've made, are you optimistic that you'll get what you want?
I am hopeful. We are continuing these discussions with the Ministry of Finance staff, including the PS of Finance, whom we met. We're also having separate discussions with other government officials, so we're hopeful that one, they recognize, the scale of the issue, because, up till now it's really been a silent crisis, because the outcomes are not visible now. They're visible in the future. And like, for instance, this policy, the outcomes are visible like a decade from when the policy came into place, unlike health. But in the same vein, we need to stem the tide now. We need to put in place the policies, the funding mechanisms that enable us to address the situation. And a solution is already there. It's to reach into the community. Our parents paid fees for us. Why aren't we allowed to pay it for our kids? And it needs to be a policy decision from government to allow it to happen.
There have also been, as a former principal, there have been serious concerns about the failure rate. We highlighted about even at primary school, leave aside the high school failure rate, numeracy and literacy rates. The reality on the ground, definitely as school administrators, are these things happening based on the lack of facilities and overcrowding of schools?
I think so, because I think one of the more poorly resourced facilities in the school is the library. And I don't know whether there is still the library period, that used to be the norm. You go to the library, change your library books, etc., and you read, plus all the other activities that come with it, book review, etc. I don't know whether these still go on, but I suspect that they don't, because the failure rate has gone, is still high. And even if we present the statistics according to those that sit, we must acknowledge that many do not sit.
Yeah.
So the real picture in in terms of failure rate, is probably higher than we, the ministry and society acknowledges, because there's a lot of people who have just dropped out and not sitting exams because they know they'll fail. They don't become part of the statistics in exams. The more important statistics to me is the attrition rate, the number of people who don't reach significant levels that can allow them to proceed to other educational opportunities, training opportunities. Attrition rate is tracked by people who come in at age 1, 12 years later they should be in Form 6. What is the attrition rate? People who have fallen off during those years.
Glenis, we also have issues in relation to indiscipline. A lot is being said about it. Some people are looking for solutions like corporal punishment, which is unconstitutional. But issues regarding drugs, it's infiltrated right into our system. Schools unable to cope with it, they're grappling with the situation, the lack of respect in schools, and the challenges continue. What do you think can be done about this?
Well, it's a societal issue, but like everything, it starts in the home. And the policies that we have seen being put in place has served to disconnect the community, from the children, from their kids, and which is why we really need a return to that shared responsibility principle, where we all take care of each other, I think. And this was what we had in place prior. And that is how the majority of our schools were built, 96% by the communities, because you took care of your own.
Yeah, I think we need to go back. When initially a lot of schools were religious by nature, and religious education was part of the curriculum, allowed, and that drove the values in the school. But now it's very restricted. The Catholic Church is right now engaging with government for the reintroduction of Catholic character into our schools, the Catholic schools. And because of the difficulty with teaching those, the majority of teachers in our Catholic schools are non-Catholic. And because of that difficulty, we have negotiated with government to allow non-teachers, but some religious retired teachers as well, to come and teach Catholic character. And we equate Catholic character with good citizenship.
I think that will be true of all, religious values, right?
Yeah, I'm sure, but we do it because that's our Catholic schools.
Catholic schools as well.
Schools, yeah.
And you had that with gospel?
Well, there's an expectation that if you're sending them to a Catholic education and school, that it comes as a package. But unfortunately, that was ripped out a few years back.
Yes.
We're paying the price for that.
Paying the price.
So even if you're going to a religious-based school, you're not getting the education based on limitations from the teachers.
Yeah, that's why teachers too. They don't know how to handle them. I think for me, one of the things that we should reintroduce is values education. Teach them good manners from when they enter primary school. For 2-3 years, just teach them good manners, like the Japanese do. Japanese teach respect and good values. For first few years of school, I think 2 or 3 years of school, it's nothing but teaching them respect, up to teaching them to write in the Japanese script, which has its character and culture associated with it. For us, I don't know what's happening in our schools right now, because I think we have lost a lot of that. And so a lot of things are coming up. There's stealing in schools and fighting, bullying. To go back, let's teach nothing but respect and good values, good manners at the early primary school.
When I went to Jasper, we had scripture classes, like in primary school as well.
Yeah.
Well, definitely that it is not happening at the moment based on constraints. I'll ask the question about parents. And a lot of parents may say, this is an agenda being pushed here for parents to pay fees. Now, many parents do not contribute at this point in time. They are not paying any sort of fees. They also, speaking as a parent, I've gone to many Parents Teachers Association and PTIs. If the students are 50, we're lucky if 10 parents are there, and majority of them are mothers. What is your recommendation on the lack of full parental participation in schools in Fiji? How can we increase parental support?
I was, as a school principal, I was always hard on parents because I realized the need for them to participate right through. From the beginning, during enrollment, I want to see both parents. And normally we would have a session with parents just so that they get engaged. And I wanted parents to accompany their child all along. One of the things I was hard on was that, during PTIs and, PTA, the CAPS meeting, I wouldn't check. Quite often it's just the mothers. It's a mothers meeting. Mothers get together. The husband or the fathers are not there. Then again at the PTI, the parents interview, the mothers come, and you watch the boys. A lot of the boys are ashamed to be ushered around by their mothers. They're not their mother's boy anymore. And if the parents don't come, they must sign the form, the form list that they have come to collect reports.
This is when you were principal?
Yes, I made sure that, because otherwise the reports are left there. Nobody comes to take it. And I got in trouble from the ministry at one time because I sent one student home to go and go home and get your parent because they had not collected the previous term's fees. Report. So ministry wanted to know why I sent the student home. I said, this is the reason. I'm not making reports to fill our files in our office. It's for the parents. They must know.
Do you feel that system should be implemented?
I think so. It should. Otherwise, where's the continuity into the next term? If they don't know what happened last time, we tell them your son is struggling and you need to front up and into the next term. Then we monitor and they monitor. Then hopefully progress will take place. Otherwise, a lot of, particularly the fathers, I must tell the fathers, please be a father to your children. Come and engage with the school. Because quite often in the family, the decision about the family's welfare is made by the father. The mother is coming, you're right, we need to pitch in, we are having a fundraising drive, and the father doesn't buy into it. That's it, kills it.
Yeah. The question is, where are the fathers?
There are the fathers, yes.
Glenis?
I always tell the people that I mix with, when you see men choosing to engage with other men, it should be a red flag. Instead of engaging with their family, in the evening they are gone to join the other men. So where is the mix tonight, etc., etc. That's a danger flag.
Glenis, do you think a weak society with not enough family values is adding to this problem of full parental support?
Yeah, I think parents should be, obviously, it should be a no-brainer. They are responsible for their children and they should care for their children's education. Because if you don't care, why should your kid care for the education outcome? And they take their lead from you.
These are very critical issues our society is grappling with, and you have, I know, as you've answered the questions tonight, we can feel the burden on your shoulders, how overwhelming it is to try to keep the schools running. And with a budget submission given to the Ministry of Finance, it will be another issue on how they can find issues. And as I've said, the government will not have all the answers or all the money in the world to pay for everything. And that's where the issue arises on the parents to be part of the community to assist as well. My final question is, how do you envision education in our schools and the students' future if the current trend continues? You know what's happening on the ground, and what can be a positive outcome based on your submission. Glenis first.
Well, the threat to schools, I think, for the vast majority of the schools, it really is existential. They can't continue to exist with these restrictive policies and the underfunding that is in place. The Australian government report, validates the findings, and our survey of school leaders also, brings it to the fore. These policies risk the future of our education system and the potential, and undermine the potential of our youth. And ultimately, our kids are our future, and it will impact Fiji's future.
Ben, how do you envision education in our schools and the students' future if the current trend continues? Definitely you are not supportive of the current trend. And what can be achieved based on you highlighting some of the things we need to push through to bring in a positive outcome?
Yeah, I can see that the way we are going to end up with a dual society. The ones who are successful,
Yeah.
and the ones who are unsuccessful out on the street, who continue to threaten us. Through what? Through assaults and violence and robberies and other petty crimes. I've seen that. When I was in South Africa, I saw that, there's a lot of people on the street. So the haves have built walls higher and higher with barbed wire fences and electric fences, but still the threat is out there. We will have, if we continue, more and more of this is going to happen, because we have two distinct classes of the society. The way I see it, we have to change. We have to change. Parents must engage. I know government will not have the resources. Therefore, please allow us to pitch in. People are willing and ready. We can partner on this much more and ensure that our schools raise their standards, our parents become engaged, and the children become engaged for better results into the future.
And before we finish off, you have people watching from around Fiji and around the world. You also, prior to this, have written opinion articles, which also went on Fiji Village, 2 articles really calling for changes and immediate changes. I'd like to ask you, what would you like to say directly to the people watching out there on the issues at hand, and what do you have to say to them?
That the current policies, the FEG, restrictive policies that education has in place, they really threaten our ongoing school operations, threaten education quality, and really undermine the role of equitable, accessible education. So we really need to work together to better our schools. The threat that Ben stated about the social divide. I had a friend who wants to put her child in the public school, but because she's aware of the state of our schools, she's decided to put them in TLC. And that should not be the case. The public school should be the better option. We shouldn't have policies that create this social divide between the haves and the have-nots. And this is also true of the e-transportation system.
I just like to reiterate what I said before. I think government cannot do it alone. Government needs us. whatever we have asked for in the submission, if it's possible to be granted, the 50% increase in fact, great. But still, that we have expressed that it won't be enough. So if government allows us, the parents and community take part in this journey through assistance with funding and fundraising, then we can really achieve what we want to achieve. And I just like to have have a word to the parents. Please become a parent to your child. They came into the world through you, and make sure that they see you and feel you all the way. Come to the school, get engaged. Even if you feel you have nothing to provide, just come anyway. Your presence is what is needed. Your presence in the school's activities is what will give the energy and direction to where the school wants to go for the sake of your children.
That's Ben Salacakau. He's the representative of the Catholic Education, former principal, former Fiji Principals Association president, and also lawyer, parent, and representative of the Chinese Education Society, Glenis Yee. Thank you very much for availing yourselves, and we will take this issue further. We'll be talking to the Ministry for Education and also Ministry for Finance as we head towards Budget Day. And stay with us until next week. Have a great evening.